1952, in Spartanburg, South Carolina, while her father was doing his internship as a doctor there. Within a few weeks after Murphy's birth, the family moved back to her father's hometown of Clarksville, Georgia, where she was raised with 4 younger sisters. She played piano, ukulele, and folk guitar, and sang in church choirs, but even as she graduated from high school, Murphy had yet to discover bluegrass music. While attending the University of Georgia from 1969 to 1974, she was in the pre-med program on the road to following in her father's footsteps. But things were about to change dramatically for Murphy when she heard one very special songwriter, guitar player, and storyteller, that is, one Gamble Rogers. Murphy recalls, "One evening when I should have been studying, someone took me to a little club to hear Gamble. I was captivated by his storytelling. He excelled in spinning outrageous and long-winded tales set in Habersham County, Georgia. I was from Habersham County. He was talking about my home. After that, I went to see Gamble every chance I got, and my budding medical career went spiraling down the drain. I no longer filled my notebooks with chemical equations, but with words to songs that Gamble sang and wrote. I started taking my 12-string guitar around to the little folk clubs and playing for money." It was around this time that Murphy attended her first ever bluegrass festival in Livonia, Georgia, where she heard Lester Flatt, Bill Monroe, Jimmy Martin, and the Lewis family. She also met her husband-to-be, Red Henry, a mandolin player and Air Force pilot who was drinking moonshine from a fruit jar around a campfire. They would marry just 2 years later. It was Gamble Rogers who introduced them. As Murphy became more immersed in bluegrass, she landed her first gig in a bluegrass band as a bass player. The band was Betty Fisher and the Dixie Bluegrass Band. But it wouldn't be long before Murphy realized that bass playing wasn't as glamorous as she hoped it would be. So she switched to the banjo. I should have gone for a pre-med degree. She had found her home. She would spend the rest of her life trying to pick like Earl and her hero, J.D. Crowe.
Oh, that's nice.
In 1976, 2 years after Red and Murphy married, they moved to Gainesville, Florida, where they would stay for the next 10 years and play bluegrass for a living with their band, Red and Murphy. They recorded 7 LPs, which included many original songs from Murphy, such as I Ain't Domesticated Yet, and My Everyday Silver is Plastic. During this time, they also started their family. Daughter Casey was born in 1978, and son Chris came along in 1981. Both became professional bluegrass musicians themselves on banjo and mandolin, respectively. In addition to playing gigs and raising a family, Murphy was giving lessons on the banjo, but was about to stumble upon something that would forever change her approach to teaching: the Murphy method, a way to learn Scruggs style by ear. When asked why she created this method of learning, Murphy said this: "I was teaching tab like everyone else, using the Earl Scruggs book. I could tell my students totally weren't getting it. They couldn't hear the music in the songs, and as a result, they played really badly. And I couldn't stand to listen to all that bad music. So one day, I talked old Joe Clark onto a cassette at a student's lesson. It was difficult to break the song apart, lick by lick, but I was desperate. I didn't think I did a very good job of it, but the woman came back the next week having learned the whole song, and it was the best thing she'd ever played. So I started teaching that same song that way to other students. It was working. I did the same with other songs, and soon I threw away the book and never used tab or music again." Murphy's students describe her as personable, patient, and having boundless energy. One student explains, "Murphy's method taught me how to listen. She actually beams while she is playing along with you or listening to what you are doing. How many professionals actually sit and jam with their students? Murphy does." Today, the Murphy Method reaches thousands of students all over the world through videos, DVDs, and downloads. The line has expanded to include mandolin, guitar, fiddle, bass, dobro, and ukulele. In 1983, she started writing a monthly column for Banjo Newsletter and continued for over 20 years. That column started as a way for her to express her deep love of the banjo and her genuine passion for teaching. It also provided an outlet for some empowering advice to the vast growing female audience that was taking hold in the 1980s. One early column titled "For Girls Only" offered the advice to carry your own banjo, which now Murphy, some 30 years later, publicly recants for anyone over 60. She wrote, "Be aggressive," and the very wise notion to ignore all the slack-jawed bimbos who say you are pretty good for a girl. Those words were to have a lot more meaning in years to come. In 1986, Murphy was one of only 3 women to be included in Tony Trischka and Peter Wernick's book, Masters of the Five-String Banjo, along with Lynn Morris and Allison Brown. It was also around this time that Red and Murphy moved their family to Winchester, Virginia. Shortly after arriving, Pete Kuykendall asked Murphy to write the general store column in Bluegrass Unlimited magazine, which she has been doing ever since. Murphy started a quarterly newsletter called Women in Bluegrass in 1994, which stayed in publication for 10 years. And in 1997, she was awarded IBMA Print Media Personality of the Year. In 1995, Murphy decided to go after her master's degree in women's studies at George Mason University, earning her degree in 1999 at the age of 47. She wrote her thesis on Sally Ann Forrester, the first woman in bluegrass. Yeah. Her studies helped change the way in which Murphy saw herself and other women in the world. She describes it as the blinders falling off. She decided to fill what she felt was a void within the community that she valued so much, and to write the history of women in bluegrass. So in 2002, Murphy signed with the University of Illinois Press, and 10 years later, her book, Pretty Good for a Girl, Women in Bluegrass, was published. Today, Murphy and daughter Casey run 4 weekend-long Murphy Method banjo camps, and recently started a women's banjo camp and a women's jam camp. She remains active as a teacher, musician, writer, business owner, mother, grandmother, wife, feminist, and friend. Murphy Hicks Henry has dedicated her life to sharing her gifts as a teacher and to educating the world with her writing. She has bravely and unapologetically spoken up for women everywhere, but especially for women in bluegrass. It is my great honor to award IBMA's Distinguished Achievement Award to my friend, Murphy Henry.
Missy, thank you so much for that fabulous synopsis of my life. I can hardly talk because I've been laughing so much. And thank you to the IBMA for honoring me with this award. It means so much. And as Fred Martinstein said, how many minutes do you have to give your acceptance speech to? So I would like to start by saying thank you to my husband, Red Henry, who would be with us here today, except he's home babysitting our grandson. He's often behind the scenes, and that enables me to get out and come to things like the world of bluegrass. He is the production manager at the Murphy Method and makes all our DVDs and sends out all the orders. Couldn't do it without him. Also to my two wonderful children, Casey and Chris Henry, who are sitting right over there. Casey's running our Murphy Method booth here at Florida Bluegrass, and Chris is showcasing with his band, the Hardcore Bluegrass, and could not be prouder of them. Two of my four sisters are here with us today. My sister Laurie and Nancy Hicks. My sisters Arjun and Claire couldn't be here. My first singing partners, thank y'all for coming. I really appreciate it. And on the business side, big thank you to Hub Nitchie, who let me write in his magazine Banjo newsletter. Fabulous guy. This is how great Hub was. Every month I wrote a rant about how awful tablature was and how you should start learning to play by ear in a magazine that sold tablature for a living. He was fabulous. Pete Kuykendall, who asked me to write for Bluegrass Unlimited magazine, the general store column, I'm still writing that, and my editor Linda Shaw and all the Bluegrass Unlimited women are here. Thank y'all. I couldn't have done my book Pretty Good for a Girl without the help of my editor Lori Matheson, who's also sitting over there. The book, I think she thought I was going to write it in maybe 1 or 2 years. It took 10 years, and she never got on my case. She never got on my case about it. She just let me work it at her own, at my own pace. So thank you, Laurie, for that. Really appreciate it. And a final thanks to all the women who are in my book for letting me interview you and hear your stories. I tried to tell them as best I could, and thank you for putting your faith and your trust in me. And end of my 2 minutes is I'm going to take a page from one of my favorite bluegrass groups, the Lewis family, who always were fabulous at their music, but they were also some of the best merchandisers on the planet. So let me just say that after the luncheon's over, come down to the exhibit hall. We'll be selling copies of Pretty Good for a Girl. Thank you very much.
Congratulations to Murphy.